Welcome back, everyone. Paul Lang from Disciplined Trading Strategies. The title of this series of my podcast, the big title, is called What Matters in Trading and Investing. You don't see that posted a lot, but that is the actual title of the series. That's the theme. All the episodes so far have built on that, and this one will be no exception. Keeping it simple, though, is not as simple as it sounds. That's because trading, like everything else in life, before you make it simple, you have to make it complicated. What I mean by that is that you have to fully understand everything about a topic before you can boil it down. Think about any type of profession. Think about being a doctor. If you want to be a heart surgeon, well, number one, you don't go on the internet and look at some videos about how to do heart surgery and then go operate on your mother-in-law. That would be silly, of course, because learning to be a doctor is a profession that requires some training, skill, and practice, unlike being a trader, which requires a lot of training, skill, and practice. I'm not trying to say it takes as long to learn how to trade as it does to be a doctor, but it does take some education and understanding, and you can't mimic some video you see on the internet and expect you're going to get the experience of a master trader. But the real point about a doctor learning is that if a doctor wants to be a heart surgeon, he doesn't go to heart surgeon school, right? He doesn't take a year and a half of heart surgeon specialties. He goes to 6-year medical school. He learns everything about medicine, everything about blood types, everything there is. And then he specializes in heart surgery. There's a big difference. There's no other way to do it. If something happens during a heart operation, the doctor has to be able to understand what it means if you have yellow eyes, or I'm not a doctor, so whatever you want to make up here. But you see what I'm saying? He has to have that background, that full understanding, and then specialize in something. Now, he may have a great understanding of all medicine, but if you had maybe an eye problem or a broken arm, maybe you wouldn't go to the heart doctor. He may know a lot about it. He would know a lot more than any normal person, but it's not a specialty. And the same is true in trading. When you eventually learn to make your money, you tend to specialize in a few setups that you love, but that doesn't mean you can go and just learn those setups without understanding the full parameters of the market, the price action, what you should be looking at, when you should be looking at, market time, market correlation, relative strength, relative weakness, the exact entry you need to be using. All these things come together. When somebody tries to take and specialize, in you will, in a certain strategy without understanding what they're doing, I call those cookie cutter patterns. You probably know them by a whole lot of names. A head and shoulders pattern. If you've been involved in trading at all, you probably recognize these names. A head and shoulders pattern, a triangle breakout, an ascending triangle, a descending triangle. These names are all garbage. They don't mean anything. They're shortcut cookie cutter patterns that are incomplete, ineffective, or just in many cases dead wrong. You're looking at something where the big picture, the most important thing, is left out of the picture completely. Unfortunately, too many people take too long to learn this lesson. They deplete their accounts, or maybe more importantly, they get disgusted with technical analysis or the market because they feel it doesn't work, because they tried a head and shoulders pattern and they probably don't even understand what it is. And even if you understand what it is, as I said, it's a worthless concept. It's a worthless pattern. I'm not saying that when you look back, you will see the possibility that several head and shoulders may tops or bottoms. That's not my point. You can look back and see anything. The point is, you will never make money consistently with a head and shoulders pattern. It's a terrible entry. It's not that effective. It doesn't have a high enough percentage of working. All these things come together. And again, what you call a head and shoulders pattern on one time frame may conflict with something else going on another time frame. And that is not even mentioned in some of these cookie cutter patterns, because they're meant to be just dumb patterns for dumb traders who want a shortcut to trading. They lose, they quit, they're gone, they're done. A very similar concept happens with people trying to rely on the whole slew of technical indicators that are out there, the whole slew of magic software. Here's a big point I want to make to you. If any of this stuff worked, I would use it. I have nothing against it. I'm not getting paid commission advertisements from the anti-indicator people or whatever they are. I would use these things if they worked at all. I've been through it. I've been there. I've done that. My first 6 months of trading, I was like many of you. I had no experience in the market whatsoever. But I had common sense, and I had that investigative nature that I went and checked out things and said, hey, that's garbage. And I didn't know it at the time, maybe what I was learning, but I just knew where to point my feelers and where I should be continuing to look and improve. If there was a single technical indicator that worked out there, guess what? You know the name of it. I know that I'd use it, right? I'd be using it. Why wouldn't I? Why couldn't I incorporate in my education, hey, let's use this technical indicator? I do, for one. I have moving averages on my charts. They're there. They're optional to me. You don't have to have them. Moving averages are technically a technical indicator, but I do not use them as an entry concept. There is no such thing as moving average crossovers that make any sense. There's no such thing as moving averages being support. All that is garbage. All of that will have you losing money. Moving averages to me are simply a guide to help better understand trends. You'll see there's 3 posts down there in the slide notes. And one of them shows a chart, and it talks about the need to really understand a chart properly. And the chart I picked was one where the uptrend you see, if I ask anybody probably in trading, most 99% of the people, is this chart a good uptrend? Is it a viable uptrend? Everybody would say yes. It is an uptrend. It has been an uptrend. I said that uptrend would end. And that's the fine tuning, the A+ understanding you need to have of charts to understand that that is no longer a good uptrend. You don't get that from technical indicators. Technical indicators are worthless. You will never make money with a technical indicator. Here's the ultimate common sense test. I like a lot of times to just go back to the school of common sense. I don't know if you know it, but there are hundreds and hundreds of technical indicators out there. And if you don't like what's out there, most software companies will make your own technical indicator based on whatever you want to base it on. If any one of them worked at all, why would there be hundreds and hundreds? And think about this. If one worked, and it became world known as here's the indicator that worked, guess what? It wouldn't work. Why? Because everybody would be anticipating the indicator. It would zero itself out. It's like me saying, I'm going to have a poker game and I'm going to invite 5 of you over and I have this great new game we're going to play. And the reason I like the game is because we're all going to be winners. Nobody loses. Well, that's impossible. Somebody has to lose. Somebody has to be the idiot. Sometimes a smart person's the idiot, but somebody has to lose the money. And it's the same in the market. It's a zero-sum game, zero-sum in a sense, and in any given moment, it's a zero-sum game. If you're going to make a good trade, it's somebody else made a bad trade, at least for that moment in time. It gets a little complicated when you get into that, but you understand the point that you can't have a system out there where everybody wins. Somebody will be shortcutting it. There's a great article on that I read a long time ago from a statistician explaining this and how it would simply zero itself out. There is no shortcut to learning. Learning to trade, you ready for this? Is very, very simple or very, very complicated. If you could see me, you would see me smiling right now. It depends where you're coming from. There are far too many people that feel you can trade by reading a book or looking at some quick video on the internet because it's just simply buy low, sell high, etc. It's very simple. Well, these people learn that from their point of view, trading is very complicated. There's a lot to learn. But there's also way too many people that simply don't understand. It is very learnable, very easy to learn with a fairly minimal investment of time, assuming you're learning from somebody who can teach you properly, not from some dum-dum who can't trade and therefore tries to teach people. I have what I call a 100-day schedule, and it's something you can go to my website at Disciplined Trading Strategies. If you go to the seminars page, you can download that up on the top. It's free to everybody. It's a guide I give to my seminar students to say, hey, if you're kind of looking at this full time, it's about a 100-day program in my mind before you should be risking what I would call a significant amount of money. Not a lot, but something more than just chump change. And it's a program to get you there, and you can kind of see what you need to go through. I don't think that it has to be a very long-term process, but there's a lot to learn. If there's one thing every student of mine says, without exception, it's, I never could believe there was so much to learn about technical analysis. These are the things you need to get the edge, to be a little bit better, to be able to beat the odds, to be able to have the odds in your favor. Just put on your common sense hats again for a minute. We're talking about the stock market. $40 billion changes hands every day just on the New York Stock Exchange, 200 billion approximately worldwide, and 6 trillion in the Forex market, right? One of the most sought after endeavors by any person because it's the greatest job in the world when you learn how to do it. And you think that you're going to go beat all these people by putting in a piece of $149 a month software in your computer, and you're just going to be sitting there cranking out money. It's ridiculous when you think about it. If you have that common sense, or perhaps you've been through some of these myths where you're trying different indicators and things like that, maybe you've tried and you lost, and maybe you think that you can never learn to trade, it's only for professionals or the game is rigged. Well, number one, the game is not rigged. See my prior podcast about is the market rigged or not? It's not. And no one needs to be a professional to make money. As a matter of fact, my best student, hands down, is somebody who's brand new to the market, because what we do in technical analysis has nothing to do with so many things people think it does. And you want to talk about keeping it simple. How about not worrying about news, not worrying about economic data, not worrying about so many things that people think they have to rely on, not worrying about fundamental data. See my prior podcasts about these topics. The best scenario is a clean mind looking at the right charts on a deserted island all by themselves with only a feed that gets their charts. That's the best way to make money. Block out everything else, because again, the chart is the final analysis of everything that's out there. That's what's happening. That's what you need to learn how to read. Anybody can learn to do this. Anybody. As a matter of fact, not only are new people my favorite students, new to the market, I was new to the market when I started, stockbrokers are almost untrainable. Market makers are terrible traders without being reprogrammed. They have to be totally reprogrammed. You may say, wait a minute, these are the professionals in the market. Yes, but they don't trade for a living. They make markets for a living. There's a big difference. And when you tell them to trade, they have a very, very difficult time. I've trained 2 market makers. I know it's hard for them to lose some of the habits that they have. So just like the doctor who has to go to medical school and spend his 6 years, I think, before he's even allowed to specialize in skin, heart, whatever it is, so does the trader have to learn everything he can about chart reading. Now, not everything about the market. When you take a course with me, if you do, I'm not saying you do it, I'm not encouraging that, but if you decide to someday, we don't spend any time talking about many things in the market. I teach people what they need to know to make money, and it has all to do with charts and psychology and experience. I talk about a 3-legged stool to making money: superior understanding of technical analysis, psychology and or discipline, same thing, and then math and probabilities. Those are 3 key things you need to know. It literally does not require the intelligence of anything more than a 5th grader. I don't say that to be demeaning to anybody who's tried it and failed. You just haven't learned the right things. So keep it simple is an extremely important concept, but the way you keep it simple is first learn everything about charts, and then you specialize. A lot of new people, when they come to get an education, they think that people leaving class are all going to be sitting there looking at the same stock at the same time frame, waiting for the same concept. That's not at all true. The way it works is that you get an education of reading a chart, and from there, everybody has their own personal preferences. For example, if you've been familiar at all with trading, you may know the answer to some of these questions. Number one, let's say you're a day trader. Do you prefer trading a 1-minute chart or a 15 or a 60-minute chart? I'll get different answers. Do you prefer to buy pullbacks, or do you prefer to trade breakouts? Those are different concepts. They're theoretical concepts. The word in itself is not a strategy, but it's just kind of categories of strategies. There's a big difference in what people prefer. A lot of that revolves around their comfort level. A lot of it revolves around the possibility of having a lot of bad trades in one category or the other, not trusting them because perhaps they didn't understand them. Do you like taking an entry that has what I would call a really tight stop, a high reward to risk, and maybe replaying it 2 or 3 times and get a home run? Or would you rather take a trade that will not likely stop out, but also not going to make you as much money? You can see all these different answers to different questions mean that you take your trading knowledge that you gain, your education, and you apply it to your personal preferences, and you come out with a few concepts that you love and that you really get to be a professional at. That's where you start to keep it simple. That's when you then boil it down to sit there and say, you know what? I need 10 minutes of prep a day because I'm going to look at these few things. What do I mean by strategies you may get to love? Well, you may not understand these terms, but maybe you're somebody who likes to look as a day trade at a 60-minute resistance area. And then you have a be the tail entry in that area, or maybe you wait for a 1-minute downtrend to develop once you come off that area. That is a specialty. That is something you can find on many charts. You can wait for, you can get great at it. You may like to have gaps in the market. You may like to be a swing trader, trading for days at a time, holding for days at a time, and enter off of special types of gaps that cause bullish or bearish patterns to follow after that. There's all kinds of things you can do. Yes, keeping it simple to me is extremely important, but you have to first learn everything. It's not hard to learn, but you do. Learn how to read a chart, learn what makes prices move, and how to see the intersection of multiple timeframes. Then pick 1 or 2 of your favorite events and perfect them. Learn it all and boil it down to simplicity. Hope you enjoyed this podcast. This is Paul from Disciplined Trading Strategies. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you for the next podcast next week.